Our next interview is with Mary Gilliam. And Mary comes to us because of her famous or infamous husband, Franklin. And Mary has continued on in Franklin's footsteps. And I think people would like to know a little bit about your personal background, when you met Franklin, something about your relationship, and how you first got together as booksellers.
Oh dear. Okay. I'm a librarian. I have a degree in library science, degrees in history of art and in history. I've always been interested, it's terribly banal to say I've been interested in books or reading, but I've always bought books. I've bought new books, old books, any kind of books. I've also bought stuff, antiques, all sorts of stuff, and I've been a great amasser. So I gravitated toward antiquarian books. I'm not sure you're ready for this. I met Franklin at the first Denver Antiquarian book seminar. And he had friends in Charlottesville, so it just kind of continued. I met him, I guess the first one was in the late 70s, as I recall. And I met him there. And anyway, to make a long story short, we hit it off and got married probably in the early 80s. But once I met him, I got more and more interested in rare books, although I'm interested in paintings and prints and that kind of thing also, but I got more and more interested. And I got more and more interested in his business.
At that time, where was his business being conducted?
His business was in San Francisco. He had moved the brick row, obviously, from Houston and was in San Francisco. When he decided, I was in Charlottesville. I was working at the University of Virginia. And I think at that point, I thought about moving to California and had an interview at Stanford and just didn't. And he got very tired of big city bookselling. I think he wanted to wind down. Those that knew my late husband knew that he moved on his own time.
Absolutely.
One of the few people in this world, I think, that did what he wanted to do when he wanted to do and moved on his own time, and he got tired of the high rents and the whole thing. And he wanted to move back south. He was from Texas.
Yeah.
Didn't want to move back to Texas, but wanted to move back below the Mason-Dixon line.
So he moved to
Charlottesville. He sold the name and the lease, took the archive of the Brick Row Bookshop and the stock, and moved to Charlottesville.
But he left behind the leather preservative.
Yes, yes.
That he had originally formulated.
Yes, he did, until John got very bored with it and didn't want to make it anymore, and then he sent it to us.
He just sent it to you?
Well, he packed it up and sent Franklin all the plastic containers and various other things, and that arrived in Charlottesville, though I don't think Franklin ever made leather preservative in Charlottesville.
No, but he had done it when he was in Houston.
Yes, he did it, certainly in Houston and in San Francisco. Yes, and Brick Row had done it in New York in the 20s.
It a long-standing
absolutely.
Use of that product. And John, that you're referring to, is John
Crichton, who now owns the Brick Row Bookshop.
Right, and is a past president of ABAA.
The ABAA, yes.
You had a Library of Science degree, and there you were. Now you're married to a very famous, well-known bookseller. What part did you play in Franklin's book life? Not his personal life, but
his
the book life.
I did research for him. I helped him with appraisals. As I got into the business, we did some smaller book fairs. He had congestive heart failure, which means you have less and less energy, so I did that. I did the books, the financial books and that kind of thing. And I used to scout. I like to buy things.
Well, yeah.
And I should say this because this is blowing my own horn. I went to an estate sale in Charlottesville. It's kind of an amusing story. An English woman, and found one of the great Sadler rarities, something Sadler had never found.
Really?
I took it home, and Franklin and I were going out to lunch, and I showed it to him, and he said, "My God, I've spent my whole life looking for this sort of thing, and God damn it, you found it!"
He was not happy.
He was not happy. It was just by happenstance. It just looked kind of interesting. It now sits at UCLA, but he was not happy.
Franklin would not have been happy about that one single bit. And how long were you married to Franklin?
Oh, Lord.
Approximately.
About 15, 16 years.
And that was entirely in Charlottesville that you guys
Yes,
lived?
it was entirely in Charlottesville.
When did you?
Although we had a definite bi-coastal relationship.
Oh,
I
yeah.
spent a lot of time out in San Francisco.
When did you begin doing book fairs?
Probably in the early 80s. The first one, myself or with Franklin?
By yourself?
By myself. My first one was in Raleigh, North Carolina, and I shared with Norman and Michael Kane, who were great friends of ours.
Yeah.
And that was the first one. And then I did the ABA Washington Fair that fall by myself.
And what part do book fairs play in your total structure of business?
Currently, I started doing them because I wanted people to know that I was continuing the business.
Good idea.
I don't think a lot of people knew me, didn't know whether I knew, one side of a book from another. And so I started doing book fairs so that I would be visible and people would know that I was continuing the business. Now, I used to do a lot of small ones, mostly to buy, and I liked them. But I find I don't do as many as I used to, so I do 2 ABA fairs, and I've been doing the Ephemera Society Fair. Mm-hmm. I like ephemera, and I handle a lot of ephemera.
What part does the internet play in your business?
I have about 1,200 titles up, and not really a big part. I mean, I get orders, and I'm infinitely grateful, and they're usually for things that have been around for a while, or things that you really have to find the right customer for. But Franklin, and a lot of them are things that Franklin had because he was a great devotee of the byways of literature. And for that, you really need very specialized customers, and they found me over the internet. But not a great deal, I don't think.
What percentage of your business would you say comes from the internet, comes from book fairs, etc.? Can you compartmentalize?
From book fairs and the internet together?
Yeah.
Maybe 30 or 40%.
And the balance?
I have a lot of private and institutional customers that I quote. I do a lot of quoting, and I do lists maybe occasionally, but the rest of it comes from that. And sometimes people walking in my door, that's very minor.
That doesn't happen as much as it once did.
No.
We as booksellers are probably facing a lot of different problems, each one of us. But what do you think are some of the challenges that we as booksellers are going to be facing in the few years that we have left?
I think the fact that those of us who've had stock prior to the internet have, this race to the bottom that you see on the internet, where perfectly good books that used to sell at X, now if somebody sees your price on the internet, you have prices that go from $100 to $1,000 on books, which I think confuse customers, as well as, sort of devalue the book. I think also we have aging, we, like everybody else in material culture, selling material culture, and by that I mean anybody selling antiques, porcelain, decorative arts, paintings, we have an aging market. It's almost like maybe we're going to skip a generation for another group of customers.
How do you respond to the statement that nowadays all you have to do is to get onto the internet and you have an instant education?
Ridiculous. I still believe in bibliographies. The fact that you really do have, I'm tired of people kept saying to me, as one person did, well, I didn't need to have the bibliography, I just copied your description.
You hear a lot of that.
Yes, you do. And people who really don't know what the bibliography is. I was taught you don't cite bibliographies you don't have and you don't know what to do with.
I agree.
Yeah.
It's pretty difficult to explain to young people nowadays that the internet is not a panacea. Mm-hmm. It's a vehicle to buy and sell, but a lot of people are using it as a learning tool.
It's funny, I was in libraries when a lot of the microfilming came in,
yeah.
And everybody said, oh, this is going to replace the book. You probably remember this.
Yes, unfortunately I do.
Yeah, so do I. And you know, I think what it's ended up being is an add-on vehicle or an add-on technology. I think digitizing is an add-on technology too, which I think is, and I think that's what the internet is. It's an add-on, but it's not a replacement. It's like, I still use the NUC, and I bet you do too.
I do, yeah.
It is not a replacement. OCLC, or First Search, is not a replacement for the NUC. And if you go out there, I will bet you half the people, a number of the younger dealers on the floor will say that it is.
And I wonder how many of them know what NUC is.
Probably very few.
Which is the National Union Catalog.
Right, exactly.
Well, as we go forward into our, into the years to come, hopefully we'll still be selling books, and we'll be meeting some of the challenges, and I'm personally concerned as to whether or not we're going to have a book business, an antiquarian book business, in the years to come. Do you think this is just going to be a disappearing thing, like the person who made boot black for whatever, or the man who made spears and armor that no longer exist? Are we going to be there or not?
I think we may be the last ones squeaking out, to tell you the truth. For instance, look at the fact that there used to be large used record shops.
Yeah.
Forget
about that.
Forget about it. You try to sell, other than maybe I think that the market is going to get smaller and smaller. I think all of us will probably, squeak out, but I don't know about
some of the young people.
Some of the young people, and I think some of it, to my mind, depends on how I sell a lot to institutions, also to private collectors. But for the institutions, it's going to how they respond to the digitizing of all these books. Personally, I hope the publishers win the suit to stop.
Yeah.
To stop Google from doing it. But it's really going to depend on that. Either that, or all of us are going to be selling manuscripts, really ephemeral material, and not books.
Yeah, everybody has been indicating the same thing, that the lower end stuff keeps getting cheaper and the higher end stuff keeps getting more expensive.
Yeah.
And there seems to be like a vast wasteland in between. Mm-hmm. And I wonder if that wasteland is ever going to be filled.
I don't know. I wonder too. I think the jury's still out.
If a young person, a person who was interested in going into the book business, came to you and said, Mary, what are the things I need to really know to get into this business? What advice would you give them?
To really know, or to really have? I think they need more money than they used to.
Well, yeah,
forget about the money. Forget about the money. I still think you need to have a good grounding in bibliography. You have to, and I think some of it is intuitive. You have to have a good sense of what you want to sell. I don't sell what my late husband sold, because I can sell it and I can look it up, but it's not me. That's not my voice. I think you have to find your own relationship to the material you're selling. And actually, to me, that's really a lot of it, is you have to relate to the material, which is not true of everybody that's selling things.
That's true, yeah.
But I guess that's what I would tell them.
Well, Mary, it's
or
good
go
advice.
Do something else.
That's been great. Thank you very much for participating.
You're welcome.
And thank you so much for being here.
It was fun. I was a little worried about it, but it was fun. Is this more than you've ever wanted to know about me?
No, it's far less than I wanted to know about you. Thank you.
Thank you.